Welcome to This Week in BJJ, the world's first and only live jiu-jitsu show. Brought to you by Defense Soap. Defend what you have built. And Q5 Labs. Stay Alpha. And here's your host, Budo Jake.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of This Week in BJJ. I'm Budo Jake, and today is August 29th, 2014, and we got a lot to talk about today. Got some new products to show you. We have a special guest, Henry Akins, who's going to talk about a lot of interesting things. He's one of the guys who has trained the most with Hickson Gracie. We're also going to talk about the most recent episode of Rolled Up, and we got a bonus technique at the end of the episode. So let's get started. I know we have a lot of Rolled Up fans out there. Rolled Up, if you haven't seen it, is a show where I travel around the world training at different academies, interviewing some of the most famous guys in jiu-jitsu. So the most recent episode just came out. That one was with Clark Gracie. And it's a great episode where Clark talks about his attacking style. He talks about the fact that he is the most active Gracie family member competing today. And he shows a lot of really cool techniques. I think you'll really enjoy the episode. So let's take a look at a preview.
What is jiu-jitsu really? Jiu-jitsu is about defending yourself, putting an end to the fight, right? I mean, the finish is showing like the really real results. So, you know, whether it's somebody out on the street or it's in competition, you're ending the fight with a submission that's stopping your attacker, your aggressor, your opponent from being able to continue.
I hope you enjoyed that preview. If you want to watch the Clark Gracie Roll-Up episode in full, just look in the description down below. You'll see a link to the Clark Gracie Roll-Up episode Part 1 and Part 2. You'll learn a lot of cool techniques and get to know Clark a lot better. In case you're curious, the episode after that will be with Royler Gracie. Let's take a look at a preview of that. Okay guys, welcome back. Now it's time to look at new products. With no-gi competition season right around the corner, you'll need some new grappling shorts. The Phantom Shorts by No-Gi Industries features a sturdy Velcro enclosure with a drawstring, as well as embroidered logos for durability. The shorts are IBJJF approved and are back in stock at BudoVideos.com. The Takedown. It's worth 2 points in BJJ competitions, and it's the best way to get the match off to an explosive start. Yes, pulling guard is always an option, but this shirt shows respect for those old-school athletes that work to get the fight to the tatami. The Takedown shirt is the final shirt in the Point series. Other shirts include for the guard passers, for the sweep, for the back takers, and for the mount. And finally, after much anticipation, we've released our first app for the Android. The first one is by me, Budo Jake, and is titled Going Upside Down, a beginner's guide to inverting for BJJ. Look for many more apps to hit the Google Play Store in the coming weeks. Yes, you heard it right. We've finally come out with our first Android app, and there's going to be a lot more coming. So I know a lot of you have been waiting. We've been working really hard on it, but be patient. The first one's out, and we're going to have dozens more coming in the coming months. Thanks for your patience. And just to whet your curiosity, we have 2 big instructionals coming up in the next coming months, certainly before Christmas. I'm not going to say too much about it, but one of them is a really big name in jiu-jitsu, so that's going to be super exciting. Stay tuned to future episodes of This Week in BJJ for more info about that. And now, after we come back, we're going to have the one and only Henry Akins. If you don't know Henry, you should. He's a fascinating guy. He's trained a lot with Hickson Gracie, probably more so than anybody else. And he has a very unique teaching style, and I think you'll really enjoy the interview and also the technique he teaches at the end. Hey guys, welcome back to This Week in BJJ. Today, I'm very happy to have a guest that I've wanted to have on for a long time. His name is Henry Akins, and he's been on the mat with Hickson more than anybody else. He has his own school, Dynamics MMA, and we're going to talk to him about a lot of good things. But Henry, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Let's start at the beginning. How'd you get into jiu-jitsu?
How'd I get into jiu-jitsu? So, I grew up in Oklahoma. I had a lot of friends of mine that were wrestlers, and I was really into martial arts. So I saw an old grainy VHS tape of Gracie in action, and I always wanted to kind of find a martial art that was grappling based, and so I saw this old grainy VHS of Gracie in action, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to learn. I was doing like Taekwondo and other like martial arts before, grew up watching Kung Fu theater and stuff like that. So as soon as I saw that, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And so one spring break, I came out to LA and found Hickson's gym, which was actually really difficult to find at the time.
Were you looking for that particular gym?
Yeah, I was actually looking for that particular gym. It was the first location that he had on Pico in West LA. So went there for a week, trained. And
what year was this?
This was 94 or 95. 95, yeah. So trained for a week on spring break, fell in love with it, went home, broke up with my girlfriend, packed all my stuff up, and moved out to LA.
What was it that captivated you so much?
You know what it was is I considered myself, like most people, a pretty tough kid. I was, pretty physical, and I've been doing martial arts for a long time. And after rolling around with some of the guys there and just being completely dominated and feeling like, wow, these guys could do to me whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, I just felt like it was magic. It was almost like, it's almost like having superpowers, and that's what made me fall in love with it. Like how effective it was and how easily someone was able to dominate. I was just like, I need to learn that, It just seemed like such an effective style.
And why did in 1995, jiu-jitsu wasn't nearly as popular as it is now. And like yourself, I watched the in-action tapes. I went down to the Gracie Academy and picked those up. But why did you choose Hicksons over the Gracie Academy?
Well, that's kind of funny. I heard Hickson was the best of all the brothers, and if I was gonna go learn from anyone, I figured I'd gonna learn from the best. And actually, the first place we called was the Gracie Academy to try to find out where Hickson's school was, because we heard he wasn't there anymore. He wasn't teaching there. And funny, the response we got is, Hickson, we don't know anyone named Hickson. So, yeah. So I end up, my aunt, who I was staying with, she's kind of not really a blood aunt, but a close friend of my mom. She had a personal trainer that knew of someone that trained at Hickson's school. So just, through, finding some people that knew of someone, I was able to get the phone number to the school and go down to the school and train.
What was the atmosphere like in the academy? Nowadays most academies have curriculums and everything's very organized. I imagine it was a lot different back then.
The Pico Academy was really different. It was an old kind of rundown warehouse. They shared the space with a karate school, and it was like an old dirty boxing gym. I mean, it was pretty filthy. It was like the complete opposite of the Gracie Academy, where everything is super pristine and white. But it just had an aura or a sense there of like, okay, this is where people go to train hard. Yeah, we had mats we had green fold-out mats that were so broken in. They were probably about half-inch thin, that we would lay out every morning. Those are a lot of good memories from back in those days.
And how many years did you train with Hickson?
From 95 till 2010.
So during his fighting years, 95 to 2000.
Yeah.
Did you see his techniques develop or change during that time period?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of changes did you see?
There's always, refinements to certain techniques. If, you could do something, but someone could defend by doing this or doing that, or it wouldn't work. Or he was always trying to figure out more efficient ways of doing everything, and I think that's why he's obviously so much better than the rest of his brothers. I think his mind is very different. I tell everyone he's like a scientist. He can look at a problem or a specific problem in jiu-jitsu, like this technique doesn't work because of this, because the guy's doing this to defend, or this is one way he can escape or get out. And then just by understanding certain things like leverage, body mechanics, weight distribution, connection, he can figure out a way to deal with that, either making things easier and more efficient or making things harder for people to escape or get out.
Everybody agrees that Hickson's techniques are amazing and that he's one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters of all time. But one thing that people say is that where are his black belt world champions? Of course, Krohn's done great. He's had a tougher time at black belt. Everybody does. But what do you think about that? Is it because there's more focus on self-defense and less focus on competitions?
No. I think a couple things. I think to create a world champion, I think being a teacher is just one aspect in actually someone being a world champion. There's so many other elements that the individual needs to bring to a certain individual needs to bring to the table to become a world champion. Dedication to the art. Of course, they have to be physical. Their physical attributes. If you see all the world champions, they're all beasts, right? I think mental toughness. There's a lot of guys that are physical beasts, but once they, get their guard passed, or once something happens to them that they don't anticipate happening, they start to break. And there's a lot of fighters like that. Mike Tyson was a person that, if he could dominate you very, very early in the match, he would bully you. If he started to have a hard time, then you would see as the fight went on, it started to kind of break a little bit, of course the technique is another aspect. So I think, I think if you have the person, you can mold them into a champion with the technique or whatever. But also, dedication is a huge part, and all those other elements that the individual themselves needs,
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because we've seen quite a few world champions who their coaches do not have any credentials as far as titles or anything like that. But we have Hickson, who's arguably the best in the world, with not world champions. So it's an interesting point that you make, that it depends more on what the individual brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge element. It's not like you can just give someone all the technique and then they can go and be a world champion. And the other thing about becoming a world champion is once you get to the tournament, there is quite a bit of luck involved, because if you get injured in your match, that could kill your road to becoming a champion. Only one guy in a bracket of 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 can be the champion. So if you get injured, maybe you have longer matches than the rest of the guys. And also how the bracket is set up. I've seen sometimes where, Krohn is on one side of the bracket and he's got like 3 world champions on that side. And then on the other bracket is, it's kind of a lighter mix, So there's a ton of luck involved too with getting to the point where you are in the finals and have the opportunity to become a world champion.
Right. So in jiu-jitsu and other martial arts, there's some instructors who have such amazing technique, but you don't always see it embodied in their students. For some reason, they're just not able to teach it, or the students aren't able to pick it up, and other guys are able to, their students look exactly like them. How much of Hickson's jiu-jitsu do you feel like you've absorbed?
It's hard to say, because that you're basically saying if you can look into someone's mind and understand how much they know, how much. So that's a difficult question for me to answer. I feel that one of the things I really took is I picked up the essence of his style, which is understanding certain concepts that basically apply to all of the techniques in jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of elements that he teaches with, like you hear the word connection being brought up all the time. Of course, leverage is a huge thing in jiu-jitsu. weight distribution. So all of these elements, once they're applied to specific techniques, make things much more effective. So I feel like I definitely have a pretty good understanding of those elements.
Did you ever get to the point, 10 years is a long time to spend with one instructor. Did you get to the point where you would go to one of his seminars and he would show something and you would think, oh yeah, I know this one? Or was there always a deepening of understanding?
There were some seminars where there might be one thing. Usually the seminars that he would teach, usually 3 hours at the gym. But for the most part, towards the end, I was pretty familiar with the curriculum.
Right.
Everything that we were doing, everything that So I was a lot of times helping teach. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time too. So just teaching it forces you to have such a deep level of understanding of it, because to be able to pass that knowledge or information on to others means you really have to understand it well yourself, to be able to break things down and explain it and say, one student doesn't understand this or that, and you have to say, no, fix this thing, this is what you're doing wrong, and then another student is doing it wrong somehow else, and then you say, oh, no, you got to do this, or this is what you're missing. So to be able to teach it forces you to really have a deep level of understanding of it, and so that helped me a lot, just teaching, from the time I was already a purple belt and brown belt.
Right. As you know, Hickson was here last month, and we had a great time on the mats. He showed me a lot of great details, and a lot of people were surprised that I couldn't do an upa the way he wanted me to do it, and he showed some great details that make it work. But I've heard lots of stories of his seminars where he'll ask the highest ranking guy in the room to demonstrate something, and he won't be able to do it. Tell me a little bit about what you saw in those seminars.
That's just like you said, is very, very common. It's not that you couldn't do an umpa, because I'm sure you've done it and you've been able to perform it in training many times. But there's a certain level of efficiency and effectiveness that it basically takes it to the next level. So even if the guy is trying to post out with his hand, he can't do it. So those are just refinements in the basics. Basically, it's not that you didn't know how to umpa. He just showed you a better way of doing it. And this is common with, world champion black belts. So many times, guys just come back from winning the worlds and would stop by the school, and Hickson would show him, a technique that you think he would know, like a rear naked choke or something like that, and would just show him how to do it more effectively or more efficiently. Or, hey, if the guy puts his hands here, can you still choke him? No, I can't. Okay, well, do this. Now it works. So, same thing like the experience that you had with the umpa. If the guy puts his hand out, now, he can base out. But then if you have this very, very specific angle and this way of pushing off and bridging with your foot, and, the other foot leaves are keeping your hips up, then now that particular defense doesn't work.
Right. And I imagine, especially world champions, their egos might be affected by those kinds of experiences.
I think less so with Hickson.
Yeah.
I think less so with Hickson. I think less because, you always hear the stories like this black belt comes in, that black belt comes in, and he treats them all like white belts. It's not like they're white belts, but he can teach you the basics at such a high level. At such a high level of refinement that he can improve things that you've been doing for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I think actually there's a scene in Choke where he's working with Elio, and I think he's actually teaching Elio in Choke at the end of Choke, the umpa.
Oh, wow.
So, I might have to watch that again to check it out. But yeah, there's a scene in there where he's like doing the umpa with Elio, and
right. I love those moments when someone can show me a little detail, especially on something super basic. It's like, that's gold.
Well, that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, is the goal of jiu-jitsu really, as you progress from white belt to black belt, is to become more effective and efficient in your technique. And that's what I tell all my students, that it's not about, you don't need to learn a million techniques. The goal is just to perfect the basics. Once you perfect the basics, they work no matter what, as long as you have the right timing and the right technique, it's going to work,
Right. So you opened up your own school, Dynamics MMA.
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
I opened up in 2010.
So you've been on your own for a while. Do you feel like your teaching style is the same as you were taught by Hickson, or have you gone a little bit in your own way?
No, I mean, I was ingrained with a certain philosophy, and there's a lot of, it's basically Hickson's jiu-jitsu is the only jiu-jitsu that I ever learned. I went from white belt to black belt with him. So it's pretty ingrained in me. So yeah, even most of the guys that I've been traveling around teaching seminars the past couple years. But yeah, everybody says, "Wow, it's exactly like what we learned over here. This style is very, very, identical to how Hickson was teaching it." So I follow very, very similar concepts and understanding and philosophy. It's what I believe in. So,
guys, I hope you're enjoying this interview as much as I am. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So, Henry, you mentioned seminars. Mm-hmm. What is one of the things that you see at seminars with students who probably aren't your students that surprises you, something that they don't know or things that they need the most work on?
It's funny because I was kind of blessed in a way that I started training with Hickson, and that's the only person I train with, and I didn't really have a frame of reference of what else is being taught out there. So, like anyone with no frame of reference, I'm learning jiu-jitsu. This is what everyone else is learning. And as I go around and I teach seminars, I see that, there's so many different styles and ways to apply techniques and different little variations. And so it's not one specific thing, I think. I think just having a deeper level of understanding of what makes jiu-jitsu effective is huge. I see a lot of people that try to compensate for little adjustments, little like micro adjustments that will make things easier. Maybe it's a body mechanic thing, maybe it's a little angle with strength. And like I said, the goal in jiu-jitsu is always to see how we can do things more effectively and more efficiently, using less strength, using less physical attributes.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you are fortunate to have one of the best teachers in jiu-jitsu. But do you see any other instructors out there who you admire and you wish you could learn a little bit from?
You know what? I mean, I think you can learn something from anyone, from everyone. You'll see guys that are winning tournaments, even like a purple belt, who is able to run through his division triangling everyone, and he's got a very, very specific way he does a triangle, and he's maybe spent more time practicing that one technique than a black belt has. So I think that you can learn from anyone. I also think that you can teach yourself once you have a certain level of understanding of the basics and concepts. So there's not any one person in particular that I say, oh man, I wish I can learn from. I'm very, very open to learning from everyone. And that's, I think, a very, very important quality for everyone to have, is not to be narrow-minded, because there's always little variations, little things that people do differently, and things that you can use to react to that, defend it, or that will help.
Mm-hmm. In my interview with Hickson, he was very vocal about the 50-50 and the Berimbolo, even going so far as to saying that they're not going to exist in a few years. Do you share a similar sentiment?
I share. Do I think that they're not going to exist in a few years? It's hard to say, because things like Spider Guard, which also kind of goes against that philosophy of self-defense aspect. Jiu-jitsu still exists, you know. So I don't know if it's not going to exist. I'm sure people will create variations, and as it's kind of new now, so people are still just trying to figure out defenses and how to deal with it and how to react to it. I think the rules of tournament would have to change, or rules of competition would have to change to eliminate those things. Why are those things? Why are those techniques so effective nowadays in competition? You know, one of the big things is because striking is not allowed. Striking is allowed, it changes things a lot. So, I mean, if you're introduced striking and say, okay, now you can use striking, I think it would, you know, stop a lot of those things. Mm-hmm. But I think the way things are now, no.
Right. So 50-50, berimbolo, inverted guard are all kind of referred to as modern jiu-jitsu, lapel guard also. Mm-hmm. Do you teach those kind of things in your classes?
I don't, you know, because one, I don't know those things very well. I don't understand them very well. And the other thing too is I feel that you don't need to understand or know those things. I think for competition and tournament, if your focus is that, yes, you need to understand and know how to do those things in order to defend them. But also for me, I feel as a martial arts instructor, and that's what I consider myself, a martial arts instructor, not a sport or a coach. You know, I feel that I have a responsibility to my students that whatever I teach them, if one day they need to use it to be able to protect themselves in a situation, that it's going to work and it's going to be effective. And basically how you train is how you're going to react in a real situation. Basically, once something happens, it's just like in competition, you kind of go on autopilot. You know, if you have to think about what you're going to do or change things up, sometimes it's too late. So for me, I don't teach those things because I don't think in a self-defense situation, you know, I think that it exposes you a lot, like performing those techniques a lot of times would expose you to strikes. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. You touched on something that's been on my mind a lot lately, and that is the difference between martial art and sport. There's two big camps in jiu-jitsu, and we can't even decide. Is it a sport or is it a martial art? Do you think it's
depends on how it's practiced. It depends on how it's practiced, you know. I think that it can be practiced in a sporting environment where, you know, there's no striking involved and you're wearing a gi, and so people can use these articles of clothing against you, or it can be practiced in a completely different context. You know, one of the things that had a huge impact on me when I first started training was, one, we had guys coming into the school all the time still challenging for fights. And I did a few of those fights when I was just a white belt. And that left a huge impact on me because at any given day, someone could walk in and want to fight, and you had to fight them, bare knuckles.
Before you get into the story, how did that happen? Did someone just come in and said, hello, I'd like to fight one of you guys?
We had guys coming and kind of not directly challenging, but basically kind of like doubting the effectiveness. And so that happened quite a few times, you know. Guys that would come in and basically, you know, the instructor there would usually make one of the students fight. Since I was there so much, the first few years I was there, I was the secretary at the gym, so I was there basically from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. Some nights are 7 to 9 in the, you know, so I was spending like 12, 14-hour days at the gym. So I did a couple of those challenge matches, and very, very eye-opening. I had one experience where a guy came in, and when I first started training, I was about 160 pounds. I had a guy came in that was about 180, 185, pretty thick guy, and he'd been doing kung fu for 15 years, and he said he did some ninjutsu. Anyways, he came in in the mornings, and the first morning he was watching the class, and every time the instructor would teach something, he would like make a noise and like be or shake his head or like, you know, roll his eyes or something. So the next morning he came in, he was throwing flying stars into the wood. We had like these wooden walls, right? And he was like throwing flying stars. And so the third morning he comes in, this guy Jason Krikorian, who was a brown belt at the time, said, you've been coming in here and being disrespectful every morning and laughing and making jokes while I'm teaching. He goes, do you want to fight or something? Do you have a problem? And he goes, I just don't think this works, And so Jason told one of the other students, this guy named Joe, who had been training probably 8 months, 9 months, who had been there a little bit longer than me at the time, said, Joe, take your gi off. And I saw this guy just freeze. Like, he was just like, not me, right? And so I volunteered. I was like, I'll do it. Let me fight him. So took my gi off. We squared up. And immediately I took him down, clinched with him, used the kick to close the distance, and took him down. And right away he tapped. And so then Jason goes, listen, man, you can't tap as soon as you hit the ground just because you're not comfortable being on the ground. That's like Henry, who doesn't understand stand-up or striking, tapping from the feet because he's not comfortable standing up. So he made us go again, and this time he was kind of waiting for me. And so as I charged in to clinch, as I set up the clinch, he kind of grazed me coming in. And so he kind of grazed me a little bit, but I still took him down, got on top of him, and pounded him a little bit, and then took his arm. Pretty quick, probably like 30 seconds. And so after that, the guy goes and sits on the bench, and you can see he's just so depressed. And so I go up and talk to him afterwards. I said, hey, man, nice fight, thanks. Shook his hand and was really, really cool with him. And he just said, man, he goes, I felt like I just wasted 15 years of my life. So it was almost like he was brainwashed into thinking like what he had been training, what he had been doing was effective when really you put it into practice. And some guy, I had only been training 6 months at the time. And, and I was much smaller, lighter than him. And so that had a huge impact on me because I always wanted to make sure that what I'm practicing is effective if I ever need to use it. And I consider jiu-jitsu a martial art. And I think most people that come into the sport or come into the art, jiu-jitsu, the first thing they want to do is, oh, that looks really cool. I want to learn a martial art, or I want to get in shape or whatever. And what happens is they think, okay, everyone knows jiu-jitsu is a very, very effective martial art. The first few UFCs prove that, how effective of a martial art it is, one-on-one confrontation. So people go in, okay, I want to do jiu-jitsu because I heard it's really effective. And then they start competing. And because they start competing, okay, I want to start doing more tournaments, what happens is the training starts to go in that direction, But I think I think it's very rare that most people come into jiu-jitsu and say, okay, I'm going to start jiu-jitsu as a white belt, and my goal is to be the world champion.
Right. They don't even know there's world champions.
Do a couple competitions and feel like, oh, this is great. I love competing, and now I want to win. I want to win some titles, or I want to prove myself. So, for my students specifically, I just feel that I have a responsibility that, they get into a confrontation, they have the tools necessary to be able to protect themselves, or if they need to protect someone else, they have the tools necessary to do it. They're not wasting their time.
Right. So the traditional way of practicing self-defense in jiu-jitsu is doing the stand-up things that Elio taught years ago that's similar to Japanese traditional jiu-jitsu. And maybe the more modern style is doing it on the ground with gloves. Do you ever train in that kind of sense where you're grappling but including strikes?
Yeah, we used to do that at Hicksons all the time too. So that's how I was kind of originally trained. Is I always say this, when I first started training jiu-jitsu, it was, let's see if jiu-jitsu can compete against all these martial arts. Let's see if jiu-jitsu can beat judo. Let's see if jiu-jitsu can beat karate. Let's see if jiu-jitsu can beat boxing. And I think the way that it's practiced nowadays is let's see if jiu-jitsu can beat jiu-jitsu. It's trained, it's practiced to beat other jiu-jitsu competitors. So where now you don't have to worry about striking. So the first few years when we were training, every summer we would go no-gi. because it was hotter, the weather was warmer, so we would take the gi off. 2, a lot of the training was with gloves or open hand strikes. So we would do a lot of times training of one person trying to clinch another person with boxing gloves on, and you have to try to clinch without getting hit, without getting hurt, and see if you can take the guy down. One guy is just a striker, and the other guy is the grappler. Or once things got on the ground, both people are striking. So yeah, that training was really, really big when I first started doing jiu-jitsu.
Grappling on the ground. If you wanted to include strikes in your grappling with both guys striking, what size gloves would be appropriate?
I don't even think gloves are necessary if 2 people have control.
Right.
If you're training with a partner that understands how to have control, the purpose is not of the striking is not to hurt your opponent or hurt your partner. It's to really show, hey, in this situation you're going to get hit in the face. Hey, you put elbow things on and just taps to make people aware and recognize, like, okay, this is the angle that the strikes can come, or this is where you need to either defend this arm or you need to move so that you have a different angle so that he can't hit you. Right. So it's really just to make you very, very conscious and aware of what can happen in a situation if you're dealing with someone that is going to throw strikes.
Right. I like that idea, because using 16-ounce boxing gloves isn't going to hurt, but you're not going to be able to grapple with them.
But it's going to be it's going to be a completely different experience. Now that guy can't grab, even the big boxing gloves. MMA gloves are fine, if you really feel like you're going to throw something. But we used to do it open palm, just to let people know, like, hey, you're going to get hit here, you can get tagged here. And sometimes those things, would escalate. Guys would start wailing on each other pretty hard. But even open palm, it slaps,
Right.
It's not...
Awesome. Henry, let's change topics for a moment and talk about Metamoris. It just happened last weekend. I know you watched it. I watched it too. Any thoughts on that event?
I thought it was a great event. I thought it was very, very entertaining. I thought, all the fights were super entertaining, very, very technical. And, you got to see a display of so many different styles. One of the things I thought was interesting was there was only one gi match, and all the others were no gi. Josh Barnett, of course, I think impressed everyone.
Absolutely.
And he had a phenomenal strategy. And I think a lot of times in jiu-jitsu people don't give enough credit to grapplers from other arts.
Yeah.
Even though Josh does have a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but like Eric Paulson is his coach, and I've known Eric for a long time. I've known Eric for almost 20 years. He trained at Hicksons back in the day, and that guy is a wealth of knowledge on the ground. Like, it's he's like an encyclopedia. Yep. So I think even Hickson, when he was talking about the Joe Rogan, I think it was either Joe Rogan or here, that he mentioned that Eric Paulson was the guy that kind of first introduced him to leg locks.
Leg locks, right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it was a great event. The surprise match I thought was interesting. Jeff Glover getting pulled off the commentary table to grapple with Barrett Yashida.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Jeff has a typical playful style, which some people appreciated, and some people thought it was disrespectful. What did you think?
He was playing. He was having fun, and I don't think he was being disrespectful at all. I think he was putting himself in very, very awkward positions. Now, obviously, if Barrett had he was giving up a lot of what we consider bad positions in jiu-jitsu.
The headstand is usually a bad position.
Yeah, and unfortunately Barrett wasn't able to capitalize.
Right.
Jeff is really, really slippery, and what it showed to me is Jeff is so comfortable with his jiu-jitsu that he's willing to give up all these bad positions because he's so comfortable. Very much like Hiron's strategy against Galvão in the first fight. He gave up all these bad positions just to try to feel what was going on, to feel what Galvão could do. And because he's so comfortable. Yeah. He's so comfortable being in all these bad positions, which is, a big thing about Hickson's jiu-jitsu, Elio's jiu-jitsu, is always making sure that you first develop the comfortableness in uncomfortable positions.
Right.
Yep,
and I think people need to realize, the haters out there, that it's entertainment. And Jeff Glover put on a very entertaining match.
It was super entertaining. Yep. It was super entertaining, and it's so funny how just how comfortable he is. Walking backwards up to someone, looking behind you. I mean, who does that? You know. And everyone's like, oh my God, wow, how can he do that? He's giving up his back, which is like but he's so comfortable with dudes on his back. And as you saw, nothing happened. Yeah. So,
well, Henry, it's time in the show. It's my favorite part where we go out to the mats. But before we go, where can people find out more about you? Tell us a little bit about your school.
Well, I'm traveling around right now, teaching seminars a lot, trying to spread the jiu-jitsu that I learned. And my school is Dynamics Martial Arts. It's in West LA. We have a pretty amazing team at my gym. Something that I kind of tried to put together for a long time is just have high-level instructors in every kind of aspect of mixed martial arts. So, of course, I teach all the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We have Anthony Hardonk, who is K1, former K1 fighter, former UFC fighter. Also, he was Ernesto Hu's training partner for 15 years. Comes from pretty much the highest regarded Dutch kickboxing gym in the world, Voss Gym. He teaches all the kickboxing and all the stand-up there. And then we have Vladimir Matyushenko, who's a multiple-time Soviet national champion in wrestling, teaching all our wrestling there. So I teach with those guys. I'm very, very blessed to have, to be a part of a gym with such high-level martial artists teaching there. And they can also, find me at my seminars or go to my Facebook page and friend me on Facebook. I also have a Facebook group page, which is called Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, which I post some stuff. All my jiu-jitsu related content and jiu-jitsu related stuff is on my Facebook page.
The Hidden Jiu-Jitsu, can you learn it by watching?
Yes, definitely. Okay. And I think that's something that obviously you'll see today. That's one of the reasons why Hickson uses the term invisible jiu-jitsu a lot, which means it can't be seen. But when he was obviously teaching you on video, I think a lot of viewers got to see kind of what he was doing, the seeing with the explanation. So I think a lot of it can be taught by seeing, but also you need very, very articulate explanation. So if you can explain it and demonstrate it, I think it can be learned. And that's why I say it's more hidden, because maybe you might not be aware of that little detail or that aspect until it's pointed out to you, and then you say, "Oh, okay." Your eye focus on that. Oh, I can see what he's doing different here. You need the kind of eye or your consciousness to kind of focus on.
Henry, I can't wait anymore. Let's go out to the mats.
Sounds good.
See you guys there. And I'm very happy to have Henry Akins here today. He spent more time on the mat with Hickson than anybody else.
Because I don't want to move you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move myself. I'm just going to come underneath your head, turn you on your side by pushing your elbow. They won't want to continue or escalate the aggression.